It's 7 o'clock, so we'll start the cabinet meeting for the 8th of February 2017. We'll start with apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Councillor Littles, Brian and Sue, and Councillor Hoolin. Any other apologies for receiving this one? Thank you. Moving on to item 2, approval of the minutes of the cabinet meeting held on the 11th of January. Are there any comments in relation to that? I'm going to go forward and sign them.
Great.
Moving on to item 3, items of urgent business. I've not received any items of urgent business this evening. So we'll move on to item 4, which is declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest in relation to the matters in front of us this evening? Moving on to statements of the leader, because it's obviously quite a fun-packed evening for the budget. I will keep it quite short and sweet. Absolutely fantastic to be told by Andrew Percy MP last week that we are in receipt of £10.8 million to kickstart a nearly £40 million regeneration of Grays Town Centre and bringing both sides of the C2C train tracks together in a much more easily accessible way. It's really good news. It means that we can start to change our town centre. It shouldn't be competing with Lakeside. It should be a town centre itself where people go and they can spend the money they earn either within Thurrock or outside of Thurrock, but spend it in Thurrock. So this is a really good step forward and a good catalyst and yet another success through funding from the government to show their input into Thurrock. As I said, we tried to calculate exactly how much has come into Thurrock since 2010. I think Councillor Coxon and I lost count at just over $1 billion.
Just under, come up to £1 billion.
Coming up to £1 billion. So it's quite a significant amount of investment in the past 6 or 7 years. I'd normally do a clean it, cut it, fill it update, but with the obviously it being winter, there's been a lot less cutting, so it's pretty much been the same as before. However, what I will be saying is the litter fines. As of yesterday, up to 649 fines for littering and dog fouling since its introduction in the middle of December, which I really would have thought by now it would have peaked and started to go down, but clearly more work needs to be done, not just on education, but it's making it clear. Drop littering in Thurrock, you will pay the price, and you will pay full price. So with that, I shall move on to item 6, which is briefings on policy, budget and other issues, which we'll obviously cover in the main body of the cabinet paper in front of us. And then on to item 7, which is petitions from members of the public, which we don't have any. Questions from non-executive members, again we don't have any questions. That's referred to the Cabinet for consideration by an open scrutiny committee. There are obviously comments in relation to the budget, but they will be held on each individual item. So we'll move very swiftly on to page 13, which is item 10, the capital programme. And over to the first of many reports this evening from Councillor Feb.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I'll be more bored than everybody else after tonight, so I'll try to make this as enlightening and happy as possible. Item 10, capital plan. So my first report tonight is the capital plan report, which will seek to shape the plan for 2017, 18 and beyond. Historically, this report was always looked at what capital schemes this council wants to undertake in the short to medium-term future around the forthcoming year. Some schemes are funded through grants, so usually where there's an alignment of priorities between the area of delivery and the grant awarding body. For example, last week's £10 million growth fund allocation from the Conservative government, rejuvenating growth. Now £10 million sounded great when I wrote that down, but the £1 billion sounds even better. But you know, that is going to bring significant public benefit, and it shows that Westminster and the government see Thurrock as a place to invest and grow. And it wouldn't do that if it believed that the people and the place was unengaged with getting better. It's doing it because of all the good things which is happening in a small council into South Essex, which is now growing out of its old clothes. Other schemes are funded by capital, so these schemes are often relatively aspirational, or they are proposed to meet an operational need where existing normal budgets wouldn't be able to satisfy that. So there's everyone around the table and in the public area who know I did make a point in my ICT annual update around the infrastructure and stability of the information communication technology systems. If our ICT system goes down, it's like a boat without a propeller. We're not going anywhere, and we're not serving our customers. I made a pledge that we would seek to undertake to invest in the infrastructure which houses our ICT servers and equipment, and as you'll see in this proposal tonight, that plan is there. It all sounds a bit boring, but the whole reason we're doing it is to make sure, yes it is boring, Councillor Howden, the whole reason we're doing this is to make sure that our systems are live, working at all times. We've already got the disaster recovery system arranged with Southend. It's reciprocal with them, so they've got the same commitment, but we are going to make sure that our customers are served at all times. So the report in itself is divided into 3 areas of consideration. The second, which serves as a bit of a new addition, if you like, schemes. The first one is the schemes which the council have identified a costing for, which are either for the benefit of the public good or are needed to upgrade something which would compromise our ability to serve. To make a point, this list was considerably longer in the proposal stage. The Cabinet did review and strip it down. We believe that capital should only be funded through borrowing, only if it has to be. There is a £14.8 million proposal tonight. It was considerably more. We have to do right by the public first. The second piece, and this is the new addition, if you like, is the aspirational schemes. So this is this horizon scanning, over the hill. Where do we want Thurrock to be in the future? And they're the schemes that the administration tonight propose that council signs up to. Schemes which are principally for the public good. My party leader has been explicit, local party leader, has been explicit that the new provision of the theatre service does feature in the longer term aspirations of the borough. In this report, you can see just that in the aspirational schemes. Although the question of how and who remains, there is a plan which is more formed than ever before. There are a number of projects this administration is taking forward, and therefore a £2 million allocation is sought and recommended so we can get some of these projects noted in the aspirational list moving forward. Lastly, a small note around delegations. So the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, at their last meeting, reviewed the existing delegations and were of the mind that the delegations as is were not needing review. The Conservative administration do believe that there needs to be some degree of review, but we will not knee-jerk at this time. We will do a thorough piece of work to make sure that delegations are appropriately reviewed, because it's absolutely critical that if capital or any money is spent outside of normal operating windows, that there is a significant and unscrupulous mechanism to make sure that the public purse is obviously safeguarded as much as possible. So we will seek to do that in the next municipal year. So in conclusion, the balance between borrowing for the greater good and the Council's financial foundations has to be considered before considering prudential borrowing. Prudential borrowing payments via MRP mechanisms are all accounted for and is within the existing parameters. The Cabinet present this list tonight, a streamlined list of operational capital needs, and an aspirational list which shows that Thurrock is open for business and thirsty to grow bigger and better than it is today. And it thanks other agencies for reacting to our positive direction of travel. Colleagues around the table may wish to draw commentary on their individuals' proposals, to which I will give way.
Thank you, Councillor Hebb. Has anyone got any questions or statements to make? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Hebb, for your very exciting report. A couple of points to make. First of all, Councillor Hebb is right that capital spending has to come from somewhere. It's ultimately debt that we're incurring, and it's right that not only do we do that in an extremely constrained way, we also keep a firm eye on what we're doing to pay down that debt. So Councillor Hebb is entirely correct. However, I'm very pleased to see that there are commitments that we're honouring. The Gateway Learning Community, when they took over what was the Manor School in Tilbury, they were remarkably courageous in taking it over. It was a school that was in a bad way reputationally, in terms of not just academic results, but in terms of the buildings itself. This administration continued the commitment of just under £1 million to help that school in Tilbury is absolutely the right thing to do. I'm delighted that continues within the capital plan this evening. In terms of progressing the health hubs we've spoken about, that's part of the business case money is now there and it is referenced. We've spoken about these health hubs for so long, it's impossible to believe that this was such an integral part of our primary care strategy and there were business cases properly written for them. That is now happening and we'll finally get these plans off the page and actually into reality. Putting further money behind the business cases is essential. And I know the legal portfolio holder for regeneration are very proud of the £10 million they helped attract from the government, and not this one upmanship, but the referenced capital money that we assisted with the Mayflower School. Obviously the government approving 3 schools from the borough is worth substantially more than 10 million, and I'm quite confident that the work my lobby unit has done will yield even more 3 schools for the borough. I see my director over there will be very confident. So I think we're going to see even more investment going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Holden. Any other member? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much. There is a capital beginning for environmental enhancements regarding Big Belly Gibbons, £70,000. Now, whilst I'm confident that will be approved, that is a lot of money. We wanted it to be ridiculous, and once we've trialled street cleaning and living in the town centre, I think it's a good idea to trial Big Belly Gibbons first. We've identified a place for them. It's going to save us on fuel costs. It's going to make the operatives safer, and as long as that gets approved, within 3 months we should be trialling them.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Anything else? Okay. I am going to touch on the new packagings. They are, for those that obviously think, Big Belly Beans, that's quite an amusing name, they are actually quite an innovative way of dealing with rubbish. Rather than not going out to every bin every day and clearing them out, it will email the council to say it's nearly full. It packs 8 times as much rubbish as it does now. So in certain areas it will mean not a daily visit or bi-daily visit, but only as and when we need to. It makes us much smarter and therefore more efficient. And that's a theme that goes through a lot of this investment we're looking for. It's not just about doing the same, it's about doing more for less. It's about working smarter and just squeezing out every single penny we can and every single piece of efficiency we can from the money that the taxpayer pays to us. It also looks to increase the way we generate money. New workshops in High House studios, for instance. So these are not just things that we've just grabbed out of the air. We've sat there, we've thought about them, and said, what benefits does this leave for our residents? Well, obviously a greater income from other sources means we can help to keep council tax low. It means that we can provide the services that we need to provide to people when they need them. So it's good to see the future and aspirational capital proposals here for once to say this is what we're looking for in the future, because there's nothing worse than saying we're going to invest this amount of money, halfway through the year suddenly we're going to say we invest a huge amount more. We're actually saying this is what we're doing now, this is what we know we can do, and this is what we want to do on top of that, which is really quite important, especially when you go through to the current capital programme from the previous administration, and we have money left outstanding for camera enforcement for North Stifford, Rectory Road and Thurrock, and in Stamford Hope. Only for me to find out last week that legislation hasn't actually been enacted to allow us to camera enforce. So I'll be writing to the Secretary of State this week to bring that to his attention and hopefully bring that forward in the plan to enable us to properly camera enforce certain areas with weight limits and weight restrictions. So it's not just throwing money at things that sound good ideas, it's throwing money at things that are a good idea and are achievable. So with that, I'm going to move the recommendations on page 14 from 1.1 to 1.3. They'll all be recommended. Does that agree? Agree. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to page 41, which is Council Spending Review, the draft General Fund Budget. Again, over to Councillor Head.
IT upgrade.
I need a new pen. Right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's CSR paper presented tonight is the culmination of the administration's mission to to turn Thurrock Borough Council from survive to strive and to ensure that this is a borough which works for everyone. The Conservatives assumed administration last year with a very clear mission in mind: to improve the environment, to improve the opportunities and the aspiration chances for all Thurrock residents, which can be seen from key work initiated and in some places nearing completion. Our universally accepted brainchild, Clean It, Cut It, Fill It, was executed last summer with lasting expectations. For the first time in years, Thurrock residents found themselves with a council who believed that Thurrock could and should look better. That heads should turn towards us rather than away from us. The question of sustaining and growing this plan is detailed in the report. This administration is consulting with the Thurrock public on the future design of the Thurrock landscape. It is ensuring that a plan is put into place which will ensure the housing needs of our children and grandchildren is met. We are reforming our social services. Like any large vessel, the ship has to start turning a long time before it hits its desired direction, and we are doing this, all underpinned with care of our most elderly and most vulnerable at the forefront of our minds. We are leading a crusade on reducing congestion in our borough, an ill which has long left been untreated. Consequently, the plan this administration is driving forward will also improve air quality across the borough. The work goes hand in hand. We are ensuring, through the service reviews which will start in earnest as of next year, that our cultural and sporting offer is fit for purpose, for a modern day, for an aspirational Thurrock. An offer which will not simply make do with nostalgic feeling, but that will put Thurrock on the map for the right reasons all the time. And we are also ensuring that our education system grows to become a national best. The administration's pledge to give parents choice about where they send their child for their education is manifesting in a potential grammar school provision coming to Thurrock, where any entry criteria will encourage those from underprivileged backgrounds to go to study, to learn and grow. Our residents are both academic and vocational, and our economic plan will ensure that our education system works for everyone leaving school so they can realise their full potential. You can only do this with a plan which creates a bold, bright, visionary ideal for our future, based on financial security. Some have come to call it a long-term economic plan. We don't, we call it the Council Spending Review. A plan to finance all the positive changes we seek to make. One which has fixed the roof while it is shining by reviewing our reserves contingency upward. A plan which is robust, grounded, resilient. A plan which thinks not just of today and tomorrow, but for the next generation of Thurrock. One that will shape what Thurrock as a place looks like in 30 years and help everyone in these borders achieve their dreams and aspirations in a homegrown solution. That's the Council Spending Review, the administration's fight and plight to make sure that Thurrock is the place that it should and could be. Now, Leader, at this point, I want to make public some personal thanks. Firstly, I'd like to thank the UKIP group leader and deputy and members of the UKIP group who attended the Council Spending Review, who gave very wholesome, level contributions. I think the CSR was a very good model for us to work together, put politics aside and do what's right for the borough. Your engagement in that process has been absolute, and I honestly can't thank you enough, so thank you for that. I'd also like to thank all officers and employees and directors for their contributions in regards to the CSR. So through the Transformation Board, our employees have been sat on the panel on some of those work streams as to what our council might look like in 10 years' time. To all of you in the council, and I'd ask the directors to feed this back to your team, my thanks to you also. So this report, ladies and gentlemen, is the draft general fund budget, and it makes a suite of recommendations, one being a general fund increase of 1.98% on council tax. The most pertinent now I will go into other than the general funding. This council proposed, or this cabinet, sorry, would propose this council take full advantage of the adult social care precept in powers to increase the precept by 3% starting from April 2017. Those of you inside and outside of this room who have witnessed a loved one decline in a spiral of ill health through the wickedness of getting older and suffering ever more common conditions, will know the impact of what a care system that cannot cope may cause. The harrowing situation, unfortunately, is that while people are living longer, the conditions which elderly adults are now coming to experience in later life have become far crueler and are stripping people of dignity and independence. If you haven't seen this personally yet, and I pray to God no one does, but unfortunately I believe it's very likely that we all will one day if you haven't already, it is awful for the person and those who stand with them, loving them all the same, but being able to do less and less to help them each day. Our social service reforms will steer the ship in the right direction, but time is not on our side, and we will be remembered for either taking the bold decision today to support our social services, or by not taking a decision in the future. The second point is that the ambition of this administration is to become as financially independent and resilient to outside threats as possible. Thurrock residents have a cabinet who won't be telling them that our very way of life is endangered by government grant reductions, but that we need to move from survive to strive by thinking and acting different. Our fewer buildings, better services model is a good illustration of what happens when we look at the household bill. And we identify we don't need one house on one side and another house on the other side of the borough, where we can just live in one house and do what we need to do. However, at this point we are somewhat dependent on continuing the previous administration's stance that a small extra tax receipt is required to fuel the services of today, until we realise our plans to ensure the council's financial stability is absolute and impregnable to the outside threats. Again, I would mention that CSR was a good forum for discussing the social care precept and the general fund, and there was general consensus throughout. Our reserves review was the first part of fixing the roof while the sun was shining, increasing our overdraft to 9.24 million in the event of a local situation which needed an abrupt cash injection. Our service reviews, upcoming next year, will reshape our customer offer. It will determine what a local authority should offer, how it offers, and it will do it through bottom-up efficiencies, and only through that will we understand the baseline. And only then can we look at what we need and can do with local taxation. We live today with the result of years of surviving year on year, and no one being brave enough to confront the structural issues of today and tomorrow. This administration is doing the opposite. It's going to move this council and this borough from survive to thrive. And one of my last points is around clean it, cut it, fill it. Clean it, cut it, fill it has been our greatest pledge fulfilled. The hundreds of thousands of residents that we talked to on the doors told us and still tell us they want to be proud of where they live, work and play. We listened. We delivered. Now we seek to extend. We make permanent next year in 2017-18 this critical plan to improve the perception and environment of Thurrock, and the scheme this year will be tackling a new set of areas such as highways cleaning, road signage cleaning and repairs, and focus on the central reservations. This administration promised to tidy this borough up. We have, but we have so much more left to do. The Thurrock Conservative administration's handling of the public purse has given residents this direct action. No more grass cutting equipment sell-offs to make the bank balance each year like we saw with our predecessors. We are sorting things out that don't affect the majority and delivering exactly what the majority have asked for. So, as I close, how much of this will it cost? How much will it cost everyone? Everything I have said tonight will cost most Thurrock residents £1.10 a week if you're a Band D property. Now, 70% of our dwellings and properties in Thurrock are Band C and less, and will therefore be paying much less than £1.10 a week. I believe, when I scribbled it out, it works out to the same price as a pint of milk. A pint of milk a week will get you clean it, cut it, fill it for the next 365 days. Cabinet colleagues, your department budgets are in this report for next year, carefully forecasted, planned with a simple goal in sight, to move this authority from survive to thrive and ensure that our customer offer is a borough offer which works for everyone, and that the cost of this offer is fair to everyone. So, closing up, Leader, I ask for everyone's support tonight to navigate this borough to the place it should be It could be, and certainly will be, if we stay true to the path. This is the financial plan that will see your department plans realised and turn heads towards Thurrock for the right reasons all of the time. A borough of aspiring people, thriving businesses, happier communities. The CSR, again, work cross-party inputs at specific strategic phases has been the stable foundation of a renewed, reinvigorated and refreshed borough, which will truly work for everyone if this draft goes through tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Head. Does any other member have anything to say before I do? Councillor Howard?
Thank you, Leader. The problem with the budget every year is it really belies everything that gets done, because we're just talking about budget envelopes ultimately, balanced but still just budget envelopes. Some of the things that we are doing, the essential things that are going to change the borough, really don't cost tremendous sums of money. The GP standards plan that we passed, we've now got staff in place within the public health team, holding the primary care network to account and driving things forward. Our key work housing scheme will come to Cabinet for approval and launch in April. Again, that doesn't cost a fortune. Clean it, cut it, fill it. We're only talking about an increase in the budget of £1 million. This department simply had to do more for less, and that is what we achieved. A substantial increase in the borough in terms of cleanliness, clean it, cut it, fill it, without substantial budgetary implications. It is doing more for less. So the amount of things, positive things we're doing in the borough that don't require huge financial injections is great. I mean, we know what we wanted when we took administration. We said we wanted smaller, cheaper government that was better when it came to outcomes for the public. Council Head referenced what I frequently said about fewer buildings, better services. And that's where we're going with this budget. And because Councillor This was not here, I do just want to address the precepts slightly. The precepts in my, I'm a low taxing conservative. The precepts in my mind, why it's important and why it should be front loaded with the 3% now, is because we're embarking on service transformation. Look at the pressure we've got at A&E. 24,000 people in 2014-15 presented at A&E who required no medical intervention or very minor medical intervention. A&E is under tremendous inappropriate pressure. That is because the primary care network is weak. The people of Thurrock put up for too long with having weak primary care and just putting up with it. We need that service transformation. We're doing that. A GP standards regime, a new domiciliary care system launched, and that system just needs a bit of pump priming to get to restore some equilibrium between the acute care and between primary care. And that's why I think the precept is the correct thing to do. But a balanced budget, a reduced spend on waste, tremendous, and clean it, cut it, fit it again. A tremendous improvement in the quality of the borough without a huge financial injection, doing more for less. This is a very, very positive budget, and it's a shame that just sheer budget papers don't actually tell the full story of what the authority is doing. Improvements in schools, improvements in primary care. It's an excellent budget, and I congratulate you on it, and certainly your officers.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Anybody else? Councillor Cottrell?
Just want to guarantee, obviously what we're doing now, and I was really pleased to see that we've actually stopped using the C word in council continuously. Too many times we hear councils moaning and groaning about cuts and not actually working together to make sure we can deliver this. And the analogy that we come in with, and I'm glad we're actually delivering it, more for less and better services, fewer buildings. These are maybe catchphrases to people, one-liners, but they're really important because that drives an improvement. If small words actually left behind that, it's like we're talking about budget envelope. If you're doing more for less, there's fewer buildings, better services, give Tilbury some love. These ideas will drive the actual policy statements. So you hear these sort of things, and we're going to say more and more of these. 4 or 5 words will actually drive through what actually lies behind it as a greater policy.
Thank you, Councillor Cottrell. Anybody else? No? Okay. Firstly, I'm going to echo Councillor Head's statement about the input from UKIP leader, deputy leader, and on one occasion your shadow spokesman for finance. We took everything on board. We had good discussions. And even to congratulate, especially Councillor Duffy, some of the ideas that put forward will be in our budget envelopes and will happen. I'm not one that's going to deliver a budget that we've had in the past where there are secret cuts. Everything is out in the open. If you think back a couple of years ago, where I said I couldn't agree the previous administration's budget because that meant the end of the funding to the CAB. All these things that were hidden are not, they're out there for all to see on what we're doing. And we are not, as Councillor Coxon alluded to, cutting. We're looking for alternative ways to raise revenue and provide more for less and basically get on with the job. Again, I'll touch on Councillor Hebb's nostalgia statement. We can sit here and bang on how much money we used to have to spend, how much money this government has taken away from the pot, how much another government has done this to reduce the amount of money that local government can raise. Well, we can sit there and moan about what we haven't got, or we can do what this administration's done, get on with the job, deliver. And we know we're delivering because residents are telling us they're delivering. A recent report on one of the social media news sites highlighted quite correctly that there was a problem in a couple of streets with litter. The references that come back from residents were, well, we're getting on doing the job at Grays, it's doing really, really well. But this is not down to the council doing the job. This is about rubbish being accumulated in the streets from residents. And they were very quite pro what we're doing across the borough. And it was unfortunate that that particular road appears to have a couple of bags of rubbish that have been kicked about and it made it look very, very poor. I spoke to the street cleaner personally, and it was all cleaned up within a matter of days. And residents are really appreciating this. And residents from those roads were saying to the street cleaner, thanks for making our street great again, which is really, really good. So yes, we are delivering, we're not moaning, we're getting on with the job, and this budget for next year will help deliver even more improvements. We haven't got 100% of the borough clean. As I said right at the beginning, we never will, but we'll get a damn sight more clean than has been done in the previous 6 years. I am going to touch on 1.5 as the recommendation that Cabinet give direction on any allocation to the CAB. Obviously, not agreeing the local council tax scheme changes at last full council meant that the potential £100,000 that could have left within the general fund to use for the CAB is a massive blow to them. However, I will not give up. We are still working with officers, I'm still working with the portfolio holder, and I will be speaking to the CAB early next week in relation to what we can do next. And I will, by the time we have full council, have an announcement specifically on that, which I'm hoping will be positive, except looking at the finance director. However, we cannot guarantee that, but we will be doing everything we can in our power to help deliver this. So with that, I shall move the recommendations on page 42 from 1.1 through to 1.6. They'll be agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 12, which is page 59, which is fees and charges, pricing strategy 2017-18. Councillor Head.
Just for a change. Item 12, fees and charges. The report presented tonight is somewhat technical, but it illustrates and articulates some of the modest fee charges to some of the services provided to constituencies and other agencies who use borough for some service or another. In the spirit of most of the reports I've brought before you all tonight, Cabinet, the main body articulates which services are relevant to a fee and charge scheme and adds any narrative around any proposed change. I shall keep the introductions to this report far briefer and will labour away on just a few points. But in the grand scheme of things, the increase of the fees and charges regimes between 2016-17 and 2017-18 proposed are modest. Less than 350,000 increase across all services, across the whole year, across all users. The full list is in Appendix 1, so I shan't be reading out every change. Our focus to fees and charges has to change in my view. I've long argued that the more revenue this council makes, and it articulates the point that the leader of the council just made, the more revenue this council makes is the more self-sufficient and independent it will be to make the decisions and spending decisions that enables and enhances our customer offer. So we need to look at our charging revenue streams. We need to make sure that we do more business, to be honest with you. We need to earn more hard cash, which means when that cash is earned, we'll have more money to spend on Thurrock people. It's simple household economics, to which everyone can relate. If you struggle to put food on the table, you can try and earn more or spend less on some of the less important things in life. It isn't difficult. So, my Director of Commerciality is leading a new piece of work which will utterly redefine our commercial approach. No longer will fees and charges be looked at merely to cover the people and process costs of varying transactions, especially to more commercial customers. Fees and charges has to change. One idea that's currently floating out is that would we want a Thurrock Plus service for some of the services that we pay? Obviously not for some of the statutory stuff, but some of the more discretionary services. Would people like a tiered service? We're a free market first cabinet. Are our prices consummate to the local markets? I think that's a question that we need to explore and understand. And on the note of being anything like any other service provider, it is long overdue to consider penalties. Let's be honest with you, imagine if you book a taxi and the chap rocks up and then you decide you don't want him. You have the cost out because you decided to do something different. But the person who had it cost out is the taxi driver that's driven 30 minutes over to come and find you, loses his income and therefore loses any more potential revenue in that particular transaction. We have it in every walk of life where we commit to doing something. I've often argued that doctors and dentists should do the same. If you don't turn up, you should be charged for it, in my opinion. There are a number of council services where that would be applicable and appropriate, and we will be looking at that in the future. My director is already looking into such a regime. The report is clear, and as ever, there are some losers, and the biggest loser, I'm almost happy to say, will be those that continue to degrade this borough with their littering and attitude that someone else will clear away my rubbish from the floor. Well, let it be known if it isn't already. The Thurrock Conservatives do not subscribe to that view. If you have rubbish, do the right thing. Use a big belly beast bin, or whatever they're called. Or even more radical, take it home and put it in your own bin. I am therefore announcing that the Conservative Cabinet are seeking to abolish the early payment fee for those issued with a fixed penalty notice for littering. No more £60 if you pay a couple of weeks early. None of that nonsense, no. Face the consequences, pay the dues. For every bit of litter you dump on your street, on our streets, will be every penalty notice that lands in your lap. We will not have it. To conclude, Cabinet colleagues will note your proposed fees and charges schedule and the feedback from ONS committees in the second and third appendix. Happy to field questions on the wider structural piece or make way for colleagues to draw commentary on their own fees and charge areas.
Thank you, Councillor Head. Before I ask Councillor Tolson to hand up to speak.
Yeah, I suppose about Big Ben Gibbons, assuming colleagues would know what I'm talking about. Thank you for the explanation and the wider explanation. So it's just a point of clarification. 10.3, page 64. The actual litter amount payable is £75. It needed to be there for the pilot in this case. So it starts December, it will end next December, but before that it will be asked whether we wish to continue with it, and that will be the time then to say whether we continue with it at 75 or 60.
Thank you, Councillor Tolson. Anybody else? Cool. Okay. Obviously, working with our own officers and our Director of Commercial Services is one way looking at the fees and charges. The other thing is something that I've raised a number of times before Council, and now as leader of the Council, in a bit more of a strong position to do this, is writing to government and lobbying for the scrapping of a significant number of statutory charges. It should be down to all local authorities to say how much they'll be charging for the services they provide. Some of these are so help us to move the borough in a certain particular way. For instance, if we wanted to increase the amount of charges on fixed Beacon terminals, for instance, to make them less attractive to people who supply that service, then we could, but we can't. And we can't, the only way we can do that is by getting government to say, local government, it's up to you, it's your choice, you do it. That's not to say we will then hike every single statutory service up. There are others that we would say, actually, if we drop that, it might attract more of a particular type of event or service that will improve the borough in the place sense, not just in the people sense. So a two-way attack on a very old problem, which fingers crossed will give results. Certainly, if we're sitting here next year delivering this, that we will see a completely different way of thinking of fees and charges. So with that, I move recommendations on page 59, 1.1, 1.2. Are everybody agreed? Agreed. Excellent. So we'll now move on to page 117, which is the Treasury Management Strategy. And just for change,
And now I'll get more technical. I apologise. Item 13, Treasury. Intrinsically, with good financial horizon scannings, is the management of the council's cash flow process. This report in particular is biased towards borrowing and investing of cash, which is in turn used to fund frontline services, using money earned through sound return on investment principles. There's a delicate mix between ensuring that our capital planning has the necessary finance and that transactions taken are done with best return on investment at heart and at principle. We've got to make sure that it doesn't max out the credit card, leave a balance for another generation to pay down in the future, and this report goes into the oversight and the regulatory piece around how that's controlled. The paper articulates the annual MRP statement for the next year, our schedule, consistent with repaying our debt, and there are a suite of prudential indicators to be aware of in the appendices. The points I want to make on this paper are that borrowing for capital and investments for return on investment principles absolutely has benefits, but it is a bit of a polite way of saying it's the use of borrowed taxpayers' money, which one day has to be paid back. As exciting as they are, things like capital sometimes are borrowed taxpayers' money. That's why we have to make sure that all the transactions we do are bring the council quid in. Things like the solar farm was one of those transactions. It was one that we took in our administration, but it was one that we supported when we assumed administration. It was a very good business case for it. The return on investment was pretty prompt for the type of investment it was, and it obviously created a significant injection into the general fund, which directly goes to things like clean cutting. We have to make sure that what we do is balanced with what the role of the local authority should be. Sometimes we must make sure that we mustn't run away with ourselves. The approach is simple. If the return on investment is clear, it's within our existing borrowing ability, then an idea could absolutely be considered. You know, solar farm we've already talked about, the CCLA before that I've talked about. Each idea that comes forward, whether it be natural reasons for it progressing, will have a degree of scrutiny, as you would expect, and due diligence, and we will look at each example. But we have to have a big deal of convincing that borrowing to earn a bit more is the long-term pathway from survive to strive. We are a pro-free market administration who believe that the state intervening in markets can sometimes have unintended consequences, and frankly has no business in some businesses. So where interests don't conflict, we will certainly look at the business case for that. Historic borrowing has created a bit of a situation of today, going on the theme for my last point. We have to make sure that we don't define the borrowing of our children's generations. The Office of Dean and the Finance Director have done a good piece of work, which regrettably didn't do too much in regards to early redemptions of some of our longer-term debt. £29 million of lend option, borrowed options, legacy from about 15 years ago, I think. It ended up being that to redeem that, it would have costed as much or even more than paying it in the increments and instalments that we pay already. But that's the sort of grounds that we're going to try and make sure that we're paying down the debt, but we're doing it in a way that's good for today, but also got the long-term horizon inside. It's a very technical point paper. I think the key points have probably been made. We need to pay an amount each year, be our debt repayment like anybody on the street, and we need to ensure that we stay within our borrowing limits like anybody outside. Ironically, it pays to borrow in today's capital corporate finance world, as articulated 2.33. It will be a focus for this council to make sure that it's sustainable as we move forward, And I'm happy to field any questions on the paper.
Councillor Howard.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I just wanted to echo Councillor Hebb's caution when it comes to excessive borrowing. Councillor Hebb referenced the issue that he went through looking at could we redeem the Lobo debts earlier. Now I've got no doubt that I don't think it was the Labour administration before the last Labour administration that put the Lobo debts in place. I've got no doubt at the time that probably seemed like an extremely good idea. And where are we now? We're saddled with debt that we can't, if we want to, just pay off, wipe off the balance sheet easily. And that's where we are, because a previous administration got sucked into this idea that constantly borrowing takes you to a positive place, somewhere you want to go. So I welcome your tone of caution that was in far more to look at how we actually not just tackle historic debt, but make sure we don't accrue it. So 3 administrations that succeed us aren't looking at it thinking, well, I'm sure they thought all this debt was a good idea at the time, but now look where we are.
Thank you. Anybody else just to chip in on the Treasury reform? Obviously, like any other business, when a business opportunity presents itself, most businesses won't have the ready capital to invest in it. They'll go to a bank, they'll make their case, they'll borrow from said bank, and then pay back interest to the bank. Certainly, from what I've seen, and of the very long discussions I've had with Councillor Hebb on this, and with officers, is that where we are borrowing, obviously, the returns that we are getting on the borrowing more than cover the interest and give us an actual return over and above. That's good business sense. It works out in the free market, and it's working here at the council, so it's got to be applauded. So I'm not going to carry on with anything else on this. As Councillor Hebb said, very technical piece of paper, but I'm going to move the recommendations on page 118 from 1.1 to 1.3 be agreed. Agreed. I'm now going to give Councillor Hebb a little bit of a rest and do one budget that he doesn't have responsibility for, falls into my area of my portfolio, and that's the house revenue account, which is to do with housing. First of all, I'd like to point out that there was a printing error, and this was a pure alignment error, which has now been corrected on page 157, and the amended document is available if you haven't already got them in the public gallery. The paper in front of you outlines a shift in the way that some of the housing services are funded. I'm a strong believer in pay for what you get, but more importantly, you should get what you pay for. There is no such thing as a free service in any part of the local authority. Somebody somewhere pays for it. I'll cover that a little bit more as we go through. But the best example of this, of course, is there is no such thing as council money. It's taxpayers' money that we manage for them. We collect it from the taxpayer, we manage it in the best way we can, and we deliver those services. So one of the things that we're looking to introduce is residents paying for some of the services that they receive. For that, consultation is key, and I'm going to take on board the comments from the Overview Scrutiny Committee in the way that we carry forward the scrutiny, proposals to charge for certain services. However, I am not going to preempt the outcome of said consultation. And unfortunately, I think at the last Overview Scrutiny Committee recommendation of the Housing Overview Scrutiny Committee recommend that no new charge of £15 a week be introduced for sheltered housing tenants, and that following the council's consultation, any charge will be applied to new tenants only. Apart from the fact it contradicts itself by saying we shouldn't introduce it, but if we do, when we do, it should only go to new tenants, it's going to end up with a 3-tier charging system. The 2-tier charging system is not fair as it is. Indeed, the way that we charge for this isn't particularly fair across the board. And if I put this in perspective, 100% of housing tenants in Thurrock are paying £130 a year in their rent to provide a cost to about 12% of those needed. And that's to do with sheltered housing charges. Now, we are consulting on this. And I would like to thank Mrs Mansfield, who was at the Housing Overview Scrutiny Committee, who got an extra question in to the consultation which was taken forward, which is, would you like us not to supply this service at all? That's the value of taking overview scrutiny. They come forward with the right ideas, they come forward with a question that hadn't even occurred to myself, and it's now in there, which is really good and to be recommended. Again, I'm not going to preempt the outcome of the consultation, but all I would say is if that were the outcome, those that do need those services would end up paying even more. And we must remember that they are the most vulnerable people within the shelter housing group. Again, to show the view I take of overview scrutiny, which is they're excessively good tool to use. Back in December, they asked for more figures on these charges. They were supplied those in February, and I'm going to take on some of the comments they made at that meeting as well. The reason we're going to be looking at introducing these service charges is about fairness and equality. This is not about, is this the right amount of fair? This is the amount, is it fair for someone to be paid for something that they are not using or won't have? Is it fair for someone in Uppington to pay for the high-rise lift, flats and high-rise blocks in Tilbury? No, it's not. Is it right for someone on the 10th floor of the high-rises in Tilbury to be paying for the grass to be cut in Uppington? Again, no, it's not. And to put that in perspective again, we're looking at 100% council tenants paying £202 a year for services that 1/3 of the tenants receive. So again, it's not really an overly fair system, but by introducing, via consultation, the service charges, it will get that quality within it system. As we all know, the government reduced the rent by 1%, council rent by 1% last year, and that's going to have to change the way that we look for new builds and other things that are financed within the HRA. If that hadn't been introduced, by 2019, tenants would be paying an extra 10% in rent. So for every £100, an extra is actually £10.08 a year they'll be paying in rent. That won't happen. I've been working closely with officers, not only in the civic centre, but in residents' homes and on site contractors to see for myself the state of the stock. I can't say I'm over impressed with some of the state of our stock. This is now leading to increased costs within the Transforming Homes project. I'm really still quite amazed that we started the Transforming Home project without knowing the state of our stock truly was. However, as we know, we're fully reviewing the housing service, and that includes a stock condition survey, which will put us in a much better place to say how much it's going to cost to not only maintain our stock, but improve it. Transforming homes at the moment isn't just transforming bathrooms and kitchens, it's also having to transform the way that our residents live. Into one property in particular, we've had to move a large family out to another property because the floor was completely rotten. The reason it was rotten, at some point in time, we put floorboards down on a hard clinker surface, which is basically just drawing water up from the ground table, completely ruining that resident's home. And that's not fair on them. We need to be letting good quality social housing. We can't do that unless we put money back into that service. Some of the other things we're looking at on the paper, for instance, loft installation. The first thing when I saw this is I've asked officers to identify all those residents who would probably qualify for the free installation, not free installation, the installation service that they can get from their energy supplier, which we all, as energy payers, paid into as part of the energy prices we pay. I don't see why our residents with a HRA should be paying for something that will already paid for through their electricity and gas bills. That won't be everybody, but it will be a start. And I don't see why we should burden our residents with that debt when it can be paid for through a different route. It is taking a little bit longer, right? In some cases quite a lot longer, for our void or empty properties to come back in the system. This is having an impact on the amount of rent that we do get in. But I can't, in all honesty, rent out our properties to residents that are not fit for purpose. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. There are a few that are slipping through, and we're renting properties out that we're having to go back to do extensive works whilst the resident is in there Clearly, it's much better to do it when we're not in there, but that comes at the cost of no income on that particular property. Finally, with the Transforming Homes projects, again, with the overruns on that, with other external maintenance program, for instance, has had to slip. Unfortunately, that now means that some of the external programs have not happened for a significant number of years. So it's now going to be more expensive because we're going to have to replace things like external soffits, rain guttering, drains and so on, which will now cost the housing tenant more through the Transforming Home project. This is what happens when you don't look after your stock, and if we don't do this kind of work and do it properly, then we're going to see an increase in damp and mould cases, which means our residents again have to put up with more work to try and rectify the problems because we haven't done as we should do as the landlord maintained their homes to the correct standard. So with that, as I say, there is a significant amount of change happening within the housing service. We are going through the review. The stock condition survey will take a significant number of months, but we're not going to sit around and wait for that. We are getting on with the job, and we will continue to do what we can within the budgets that we have. So without opening up to questions. Councillor Sosson.
Thank you. I might become a bit confused. Currently, are there any service charges in there?
Yes, sorry, I meant to turn my mic off. Yeah, we do. There are some service charges already. For instance, if you do concierge flats in Tilbury or Chapel, you have to pay for that. You have to pay for charges if you receive a caretaking service. So yes, we already do charge on some things.
I just want to make a comment on Lloyd's really. Before now, I've seen the Lloyd property, and I was assured at the time, a few years ago, that they do try and bring them back into occupancy as quickly as they can. I don't know whether the time scale, but all the time they're empty, they're not delivering, are they? Can we make that service more efficient? I wouldn't know how many we've got off the top of our heads, and I don't expect you to, but I think we could be more efficient there.
The number of voids we had changes obviously daily. There have been new building regulations brought in, so things like the fire regulations, new codes for wiring and so on. So we have some properties people lived in pretty much sort of 30, 40 years that have moved on, passed away or whatever, and the internal works is significant. We can't do that overnight, unfortunately. So there is a 30-day that we're able to do. I'm going to be quite open, as I have done in the past. The way we calculate that 30 days was something that was brought in by the previous Labour government and means nothing to anybody in reality. Councillor McPherson runs a property management service. She knows a void is the day that you stop getting money on it to the day you start getting money back in it. And that's the thing. When we have capital voids, they can be empty for a significant number of weeks, months, and sometimes even years. And we've had to put a significant amount of money into some of the ones that are empty just to bring them up to standard. And we're not talking £5,000, £10,000, we're talking £20,000, £30,000, £40,000 to bring them up to standard. That's the scale of the problem. That's not an overnight job we have to schedule it in. Councillor Thompson.
So you've made me think about this in great detail. So how do they get to be in that condition when they're empty by monthly? Do we not check in the meantime?
We do check, obviously, but not as often as we'd like. One of the things that we're doing through the review is to look at an inspection every couple of years. But the inspection will not go into what's changing electrics, if the electric wiring regulations change, or if fire regulations change. That won't happen when the tenant moves out, or we have to do it immediately as part of changing legislation. So, yeah. Anyone else? Sorry, Councillor McPherson.
Thank you very much. You mentioned new build in your speech. Can you tell us if there's any more plans to build more housing stock?
We have some outstanding building works that are carried on across the borough. They will continue. But obviously, as I said, the way that the 1% reduction in rentals means we have to look at a new way of funding these. Obviously making people responsible for the services they get. So, for instance, if we look at the lift charges and stuff, all got laid out in here. That is maintenance costs that will not be borne by everybody, but borne by those that use those services, which then free up some money within the HRA to look at building more houses. But it is my aspiration to definitely be building more council houses. There are other ways, of course, like government increasing the threshold of what we would borrow, which then touches on what we just discussed. The treasury management is how we borrow, what we borrow, and how we make sure we're getting value for money for those properties. That's part of the housing review. Anybody else? Councillor, question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we can give some sort of guarantee to this administration's committee to social housing, council properties, and that we've got a number and we replace more if we ever have any right to buy. I like the right to buy, I believe in right to buy. Many people maybe around this table have gained a right to buy, but we can guarantee that we still increase our housing stock and not reduce the number of housing stock, we actually improve and increase the number.
Thank you, Councillor Cockfield. Oddly enough, one of the first things that I discussed with officers was exactly that, and I still cannot work out why. But the previous administration was not using its right to buy receipts to pay off how the money used to the new builds that are happening in Bruins Court, across the way the Echoes and so on. So we're now using the housing, the right to buy housing receipts for that. So we're getting a lot more bang for our buck. And yes, we do need more housing stock, full stop. Irrespective of some views that is it right that the housing stock is supplied by the council rather than the private market. Well, I think there's a place for both of us to do so. And it is, to say, my aspiration, and it will be something that I bring up at every single meeting with my directors, is how we're going to do it, where we're going to do it, and more importantly, when we're going to do it, because I need that to start happening sooner rather than later. Anybody else? Just to close, obviously, part of this is to move to go to consultation, and the part of the consultations, again, I'm going to go back to what was said at overview scrutiny, was are there going to be service level agreements? It's no good asking someone for money to maintain the lifts if the lift's always broken down and not working. That's unfair. You should get what you pay for. So when we go to part of the consultation, we'll be going out to the residents and making clear that there will be a set service level agreement that will say your lift will be in action however many days of the year, or it will be repaired in a certain period of time, or the door entry will be repaired in a certain period of time. It's unfair to ask them to pay for service if it's not happening. With respect to the sheltered housing charges, as it's outlined in the report, a significant number of those that will be, if we go down that route, will be effective, will be in receipt of full partial housing benefits, and they won't be having to pay anything extra because that's coming through the benefit scheme. But I've asked, and it's been agreed, that a senior officer will go to every single sheltered housing complex to discuss this with people in person. It will not be done solely electronically, it will not be done solely by pieces of paper, it will be done face to face. And I hope to join officers on some of these, or as many of these as possible, to explain why we're moving forward with this and who it actually truly affects. I think it's the right thing to do. I don't make consultation as part of consultation, I like it done properly. And I've regularly said a lot of our older residents have not got access to the internet or may not be able to use it at all. How can they be engaged if we were just doing it in that method? So we are doing quite a lot more than perhaps we would do in other consultations. So with all that, if we look to page 141 to 142, recommendations 1.1 to 1.7, are they all agreed?
Agreed.
Excellent. And then we move to item 15, which is the review of vision and corporate priorities, which is back to Councillor Head.
Thank you, Leader. The role of any council is varied. Budget setting, budget balancing being utterly critical. We've talked about a lot of that tonight, so I'm not going to do it anymore. We've talked about vision a lot tonight as well, and aspirations, and what we're fighting and striving for to achieve the people that we represent. Visions don't work without plans, and plans don't work without vision. It's a simple dynamic of leadership. Back at the start of the decade, Thurrock Council, under Labour leadership at the time, instigated a refresh of the priorities and values of the borough. Not just the civic offices, but the entire borough. It was a vision which was shaped with public input, council input, and input from the voluntary and community sector. It reflected the times. It was one which, at the time, the Conservative Party was more than happy to support. We stood shoulder to shoulder, then with a majority Labour administration in signing up to those values. The world has changed since then, as has the nation and the local scene. If I was to read out any of those 5 headings, much has been done to tick or advance them in a very sustainable manner. Some are completely done, some have moved on, some, to be fair, are still work in progress. But it is time for Thurrock to move from strive to survive, to thrive. But before doing that, we have to look at the vision of today. Are the priorities of yesterday consummate and still where we need to go tomorrow? The answer, of course, is yes and no. But the question is, have we created a great place for learning and opportunity, as the vision would say? Yes. Education in Thurrock has never been more prosperous, available, diverse. Do we need to move on from creating an education system like the old vision articulated to actually helping people achieve their potential, like in the proposed vision? Yes, there's no doubt. It's a maturity. It's an extension of what was once the priority, which has now grown, developed, and we now look at the world we're standing today. So I'm again asking for the support of the Cabinet tonight to propose a vision refresh of the borough, one that followed the same engagement principles of the previous administration, one that will help everyone make Thurrock the place it should be, could be, and will be if we look at ourselves and assess what the next part of the journey is. No one will be surprised tonight to hear me say that this new proposed vision is about driving, striving and thriving. Striving, not just to make do and get by, but by going up a gear, delivering benchmark customer services, which are right first time and connected across agencies so that the best result for the end user, usually Thurrock constituents, are achieved. Driving a local economy where businesses invest, and in return they provide wholesome employment and new life opportunities to local people. Driving an education system which gives enough challenge for our academic champions. Thriving to become a borough which works for everyone. A co-joined, uniform, aligned, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, hip to hip set of people inside and outside of this building, taking Thurrock to a bright, shiny horizon where people want to come, live, work and play. The vision adds a direct link in being proud of our heritage and history. We want to celebrate more of it. It embraces our geographical position, an economic epicentre between Essex, Kent, East London and the Thames Estuary. Let's be honest, if this borough can't do it with where we are and what we can be, there is nobody that can. This borough can become so much more. This vision would be a guiding light to everyone in getting this borough to the end destination. That is the mission at hand, and I ask for unilateral sign-up in achieving what must be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Do you have any steps on that, Councillor Howard? Just to briefly touch on the education and skills aspect. Look at Thurrock's, look at the nation's unemployment rate and look at the Thurrock's unemployment rate, it's even better. This is a borough where if you want a job, you get a job. That is how low the unemployment rate is here. But what the challenge is now is to move our students towards the tremendous opportunities they've got. The old vision was very command and control. What type of schools we're building, what services we're providing, which is the wrong approach. I've had meetings over the last few months with DP World, talk about apprenticeships, with Royal Opera House, talk about keeping the trailblazer going, because we want to provide a marketplace that is linking with education to make sure students are aware of the tremendous opportunities that there are out there. We've got record low unemployment in the borough. We need to now make sure we're equipping our students with the tools to go after any type of job, not just a job. And, you know, we mentioned this will have to go to full council. I hope that the Labour Party are minded to support it, because when it came to the big things, we did play responsible politics. When it came to passing an LDF, very controversial when you're talking about building that many homes, we voted for it when we were in opposition. When it came to passing the LDO, one of the most significant economic things we've ever done with DP World, we voted for it. When it came to agreeing the last vision, a very important corporate strategy, did we agree with everything? No, but we voted for it. So I'm hoping when it comes to it, they're going to look at the document. No one is going to agree with everything in uniform, but I'm hoping they're going to act in a responsible way, in the same way that we did when we were in opposition. But certainly in terms of the education piece, it's right that we're talking about aspiration, because we're not in the business of building institutions anymore. We're in the business of trying to nurture that market. We've got tremendous providers here like Harris. We're helping our multi-academy trusts strengthen themselves. We're going to bring a grammar school here, and that is what we need to do. Continue that aspirational vein to make sure that students don't just have access to the plenty of jobs out there, have access to the right jobs that are right for them.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Cockburn?
I'd like to echo that as well. Obviously, this council is split. It's been a minority administration now for a good few years. But in the meantime, you've seen major investment. We've touched on public sector investment, but we haven't actually touched on private sector investment. The private sector investment here is in the billions of pounds in the last few years. An astonishing amount. Only last week we had another £1 billion into Tilbury. This is only happening because in the end we want to actually tone the vision, and this is really important, this document here, to see that vision. We're going forward with a local review of the LDF framework coming for later this year, and this is critical to moving this borough forward into the next stage. We've had a stage, we've had disagreed quite a bit in the last 5 or 6 years as opposition, but when it comes to the big decisions, the big visions, the big prospects, we all want to see children getting better jobs, more money. We're already above the region average for what wages we can people here take home. Then sadly, there's not enough homes here for them to live here and cherish, and that's why we've got to agree with that in Tilbury and Grays and Purfleet. And then this is what we need to do. But we've got to deliver the homes, and that's where we need everyone on the same side, and this is part of it, to make sure this borough thrives against a world capital next door. We can see something now, very special coming in the next 20 years.
Thank you, Councillor Cockburn. Anybody else? Okay. Councillor Cockburn really hit the nail on the head. Investors, big investors, look to Thurrock, and they will look and they will see our new vision of Thurrock, and that's what they will base their initial views on. Is this a place we can do business with? Other people doing business, but is it the kind of place we can do business with? And the answer from that is yes. Because yes, we were where we were. We had a previous vision, which we all signed up to, and it was the right thing to do. This is the new vision. We can't sit in the past all the time. We can learn from it, but we need to be looking forward and improving, and therefore attracting more and more business. And not just business, as Councillor Cockburn said, investment in the form of houses, investment in the form of infrastructure. And this goes a long way to do it. Obviously, Councillor Howard mentioned the Labour group, how that happened in the past. We've also got to mention there is the second largest group in Thurrock is the UKIP group, and hopefully they will also be supporting this when it goes to full council. It's the right thing to do. So now we move to the recommendations, which are on page 160, of 1.1 and 1.2, and outline. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Just to reiterate, the decisions we made tonight are mainly to move these to the next stage, which is go to full council for approval. And hopefully, as said, being open and honest in the way that we've conducted, the way we create the budget. And again, to thank the UKIP group leadership for taking part in that. Hopefully we'll have a nice smooth ride into the budget, set the budget envelopes, and indeed vision and priorities. So the budget is not set, things here are not going to set in stone. The only things that can set in stone here are things that we're going into consultation for what we're going to do in the way of introducing service charges and so on. So I'd like to thank you all and call